A good Erev Shabbos. After Shavuos, the real work begins. It's a long road until the high holidays, and what we have to look forward to is a hot summer, late Havdalah, Tisha B'Av. It could lead a person to complain. Too hot, too long, too many weeks without a good holiday. It's significant, in fact, maybe it's essential, that the idea of complaining figures so prominently in this week's Sedra, in Behaalosecha. It may be the most classic complaint in the Jewish universe, complaining about the food. The food is terrible. The portions are so small. Here's a joke from the vault. A Jew typically is looking for spirituality. So what does any Jew do? He flies to Nepal. He takes the bus up to Kathmandu and signs up for life as a monk in a Buddhist monastery there. It's a life of contemplation and prayer and silence, with only 2 words permitted every 10 years. So he meditates, he contemplates. After 10 years of silence, this Jew comes to the master for his once every 10 years check-in meeting. He sits down. The master says, "Well, you've been here 10 years meditating in silence. You're allowed 2 words. What do you have to say?" The Jew says, "Bed hard." 10 more years of prayer, meditation, reflection, another meeting. What does the Jew boo have to say for himself now? Food cold. Another 10 years of contemplation. Now it's been 30 years. The Jew comes into the master's room, sits down. What are your 2 words? I quit. So what does his Buddhist master say? Well, I certainly saw this coming. You've done nothing but complain since the moment you got here. First of all, it's our right to complain. And it's fair to say that sometimes we lean into it. The truth of the matter is, if we did not have the option to complain, our outlook on the world would be very different. Our lives as Jews would be quite different. You have to have the possibility of complaining, the option, the choice to complain, for the choice to be real. Not that we have to take every opportunity, but the opportunity has to be there. Otherwise, we don't have free speech or freedom at all. The complaint in this week's Parsha is about the food. It's lechem min hashamayim. It's literally manna from heaven. It comes daily, so you don't have to drive over to Bath or Street to get it, or wait in line, or pay Sobeys prices. It's right there on your doorstep. It tastes like anything you want, with a few exceptions, so we decided we want those exceptions. Oy vey, we said, remember in Egypt, there you could get a good meal. Somehow we forgot the slavery and the oppression and the misery and the beatings. We only remembered what was served at the shmorg. It's a great example of selective memory. But there's always the possibility of us complaining, and really there should be. Again, not that we have to seize every opportunity, but let's look at what is the deeper meaning of complaining. It means we evaluate things carefully. It means we have high standards and high expectations. And we evaluate the situation versus what we know it could be, what we know it should be. You call this a bagel? You know what a bagel really is? I'll tell you who used to make a good bagel. But really, it's not just about the food. Every situation we look and we say, is this as good as it gets? Couldn't we do any better? The fact that we can complain means we have a vision of a better world. The fact that we do complain means that at our core, we believe things can change. There's no resignation to the situation as it is. There's no, oh, well, what can you do? Here's a popular saying that no Jew could have ever invented. It is what it is. We really do believe things can get better, and they should, and it can happen now. If you view it in that light, what is prayer? Prayer is kvetching. In a very nice way, of course. Dear God, thank you for creating the world. Thank you for keeping us alive and sustaining us. And while you're sustaining us, could you sustain us a little bit more, a little bit better? Could the market go up a little bit? Could my cousin who's got the flu get better? Could the judges maybe judge fairly, the leaders lead a little more wisely? And while you're at it, how about a little ingathering of the exiles? Is that too much to ask? After all, it's for your name's sake. Aviva Zornberg examines the nature of complaining and what we were complaining about in this parsha in her study of the book of Bamidbar, which is quite brilliantly titled Bewilderments. Bewilderments. We know what it is to be bewildered, and the title has the word in it, wild, as in the wilds, the empty, barren desert where our journey towards Israel loses its momentum a little bit. After the life-changing event of leaving Egypt and becoming a free people, we head toward Mount Sinai over the course of 49 days to become a godly people with a godly mission to fulfill and a purpose to drive us. We witness together, like one being with one heart, the revelation of the divine will to us in the form of 613 mitzvot, which connect every moment of our lives in the immanent world with the transcendent Creator and offer holiness and meaning to everything we do. Sounds great, right? Maybe for some, it's a little overwhelming. Zornberg quotes the Ramban to say that our first turn in this moment was to turn away from God. Over the following weeks from Shavuos until Tisha B'Av, in that first year in the desert, there were 10 miserable weeks in the history of our people. The sin of the golden calf, the rebellion of Korach and his band of agitators, the sin of the spies, in which we spoke badly about our ability to live in Israel. That complaint took place on Tisha B'Av, which up until last year was a day of mourning and sadness. Maybe this year will be different. But in that first year in the wilderness, bewildered by everything, we turned away from the mountain, turned away from God. Vayis'u mehar Hashem. We turned away from the mountain where we had encountered God. Rabbi Chanina in the Gemara says that this turning away meant we broke off our close communication with God that was the Sinai experience. But Ramban mentions a midrash that says that we were like little kids who run away from responsibility and obligation. We turned away after the first 613 commandments, saying, my goodness, if we stay, maybe God will give us more things we have to do and more things we can't do. Let's get out of here. On the one hand, it's the most base of desires to free oneself from obligation. At the same time, it might be what is a very human and commonplace response to displace one kind of desire with another. The complaints of the complainers in our parsha, the misonanim, means the ones who complain. That's exactly how they're labeled, is about food and what foods we missed and desired from Egypt. It's true, of course, food is important, but just as important to remember, it's not the main thing. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak explained the difference between fasting on Tisha B'Av and fasting on Yom Kippur. On Tisha B'Av, who can eat? On Yom Kippur, who needs to eat? That's really the point. On Yom Kippur, we're spending the whole day focused on our all-important relationship with God, the source of our life and of all worlds. One day out of the entire year, we devote to that all-important connection at the expense of everything else, even eating and drinking. That's the inner meaning of fasting on Yom Kippur. But in America, anyway, where I come from, some Jews only talk about the breaking of the fast. Where are you going for the breaking of the fast? What are they serving at the breaking of the fast? Oh, you had mini bagels and lox? We had little kugels and muffin cups. It was so elegant. 3 kinds of herring. It's fun and it's nice, but it's not the main point. The main point is the closeness and renewal, the tshuva that we accomplish on Yom Kippur. One of my rabbis used to say, probably still says it, it's like going to visit a king's palace, and you spend the whole day looking at how beautiful the washroom is. You know what? It is, in fact, a spectacularly decorated room, but it's not the main room of the palace, not even the main room for your visit that day. But a person can easily lose focus, and we often do. It's a challenge to keep ourselves focused and not lose sight of what's truly important, and be distracted by what's merely interesting or tasty or entertaining. So in the Parsha, there we are, having just gained our freedom, having been given the Torah as a way of life, and here we are complaining. How could we be complaining at such a moment? Well, Zornberg draws a precious insight from the Torah's use of a verb and a noun of the same origin, hitavu ta'ava, which ArtScroll perfectly logically renders as they cultivated a craving. Others translate it, they goaded themselves on to desire. Literally, it means we desired to desire. We wanted to desire. That's what we were missing. When you're enslaved, you desire freedom. When you're wandering aimlessly, you desire direction and purpose. What happens when you get all that you wanted? What is there left to desire? So one thing people do is turn back to basics, food and more food and better food and more better food. But what else is there to do? When you don't get what you want, you complain because nothing's right, or it could be. You want to want. This insight is worthwhile for us to think about in an age where, notwithstanding the last 30 weeks or so, our lives have been fairly stable and solid and comfortable for decades. We have what we need and a great deal of what we want. What is there left to want? Well, complaining about what we have and what we don't have is one option, that's for sure. We can always say, the flight out of Paris was delayed and we had to wait. Or, I ordered my steak medium rare and they brought it to me medium well. Ruined, completely ruined. Or, the caterer at our simcha didn't order the right shade of chair covers. It was so embarrassing. These are what people are accustomed to call first world problems. They really are problems in the realm of luxury. And our complaints are not without basis. The fact is, complaint has to be a real option. And maybe that's why the Torah goes into such detail to describe it here, because it is a real choice in life. If we don't have the option to complain, we don't really have full free choice. Which is not to say we have to exercise our option. Not everything needs a complaint. Gratitude is also an option. Humility is also an option. Giving, rather than waiting to get, is also an option. Sharing what we have with others, instead of just accruing more for ourselves. There is a crisis which comes about from having it all, which perhaps, although we didn't feel it, we've enjoyed for the last little bit of Jewish history. This now apparently concluded golden age of North American Jewry. We ran out of things to want. Hit avu ta'ava. We desired desire. Now, as the ground under our feet shifts, desire changes too. Now we want to send our kids to Harvard Law School without worrying for their physical safety. We want to fly the flag of Israel on our car without it being broken off. We want to daven in a shul that doesn't have smashed windows. We want to fly nonstop from Toronto to Israel. We want Israel not to be threatened on all three of its land borders. Now, all of a sudden, there's plenty to want. Hopefully, the dark chapter of Jewish history that we're in now is a very short one and will be over even by the time you listen to this. Hopefully, our hostages will come home and peace will reign on all of Israel's borders and within its borders, and Jews in other lands will be welcome and safe and secure dwellers in whichever lands they choose. Then again, maybe it won't be like that. It's too soon to tell. Our hope is that when security and calm return, as they will sooner or later, we guard and keep and treasure the bonds that connect us to one another and to Torah and to God, the giver of the Torah. We'll encourage and inspire one another, as the title of our parsha suggests, Behaalosecha. We'll nourish the sparks in each other's souls so that they're drawn upward of their own accord. Shabbat Shalom.